Það verið öll velkomin á enn fyrirlesturinn í fyrirlestarröðinni. Að þessu skipti eru á Zoom. Og við vorum svo heppin að María ætlar að fjalla landupplýsingakerfi í dag og hennar rannsókn hafnir á Miðjarðarhafslandinu. Hún hefur verið lauk doktorsnámi 2016 og hefur verið svona viðloðandi í gísheiminn mjög lengi og núna rannsakandi hjá Lund og þau ykkar sem hafa verið að læra í Durham eða Lund kannast vonandi við hana. Hún hefur verið að kenna fólki. Just take it away, Maria. You're...
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, so first of all, thank you all for coming today to hear me speak about computers and Roman ports and geographic information systems and so on. I am very excited to be here, and I was telling before to the organizers that this is a great opportunity for me to reflect on how the project is going and where the directions I want to develop it more. So thank you for giving me this opportunity and for hearing me. Okay, so as you can see, today the talk is about combining computers and archaeology, applications of GIS and spatial analysis to the study of Roman ports in the Mediterranean. But many of you don't actually know me that well, so the first thing I'm going to do, if I can make the presentation move, is introducing me a little bit. Okay, so I am a weird combination of an archaeologist and that is using computers and computing science. So I had a more traditional education. So I did my licenciatura, which is a mixture of degree and MA in history. I specialized in prehistory, ancient history, and archaeology. And then I won a scholarship at the Pablo de Olavide University in Spain, in Seville, to do a PhD about whatever topic I wanted. And I decided, okay, let's do landscape archaeology because it sounds a very interesting topic. As part of the PhD, I did a course, a master's in Master of Science at the University of Southampton about computing applications in archaeology, special technologies in archaeology. So the idea was to do these masters to get to learn the tools I was going to use during my doctoral research. And then once I finished my PhD, I got a certificate that is basically allowing me to teach in higher education institutions. Then with these tools, geographic information systems, spatial analysis, databases, and the perspective of landscape, I have worked in many different projects, and here are some of them. But the most relevant of them is actually the one I am developing at the moment, thanks to funding from the Swedish Research Council, and it's called Beyond Ports, Movement and Connectivity in the Roman Mediterranean. This project started just at the end of 2021. So I'm basically starting the second year of it, and I will be talking a lot about this. But then to give you a little bit of more context about the place where I come from, in all of these projects I have worked in, I have usually worked in a number of topics, which are this one. And then applied a number of methods such as geographic information systems, relational databases, the methodologies of spatial analysis and statistics, and lately also simulations and modeling. So the thing is that in my past work, I had developed kind of two different paths. One path was related to the organization of landscapes and the changes on landscapes and how they help us to understand the cultural changes in of past communities. And then a second strand related to ports and the organization of ports, the development of port systems, and how and about the impact they have at the local scale of analysis. So with Beyond Ports, what I'm doing is focusing focusing on these two ideas and trying to merge them in order to understand the impact of ports, not only at a local scale of analysis, but more in the wider regional context. So if you are curious about my previous work, here is the QR code. If you read it with your telephone, you will go straight to my Yorksaid account, and you will see all of the papers and all of the stuff I have done before. Okay, so that's me. So let's focus on Beyond Ports. So the basics of Beyond Ports is that it is funded by the Swedish Research Council. Then it's hosted by the University of Lund, the Department of Archaeology and Ancient History. And because this is a kind of a large project, I have established collaborations with researchers from other institutions. For example, Professor Henrik Herdig and Professor Nicolo De Lunto at the Department of Archaeology and Ancient History of Lund. Then with Professor Stefan Feiser at the University of Bonn in Germany, and with Professor Dario Bernal Casasola at the University of Cádiz. And I have done some research visits in these two institutions at the University of Bonn last year in summer, and then at the University of Cádiz in last autumn. And nowadays, I'm actually giving this talk from Rome, which is kind of stormy today. So at the moment, I'm doing a research stay at the the Swedish Institute of Classical Studies in Rome. And I'm also making use of all of the libraries that are here that are absolutely amazing to get all of the information I need for this project. Then the project life, I am very, very lucky because I have 4 years to complete this project. So from the 1st of December 2021 to the 30th of November 2025. So it's still a little bit more than 2.5 years to go. Again, I have some resources if you are interested in getting to know more about this project, more details. First of all, the research portal of Lund University, where you can get more information. Then I'm also working on a project website that is hopefully coming soon. And I will be uploading all of the scripts and data sets and outputs into my GitHub webpage. For now, it's empty because I haven't done any analysis yet, but no worries, things will come. And then sometimes I am not particularly active in Twitter, but sometimes I write some I would like to think that useful stuff. So that's another way of contacting me. Okay, so this is the basic info. Then Beyond Ports is trying to achieve a number of research objectives. And the specific topic is exploring multimodal mobility and connectivity within the Roman Empire. And multimodal mobility, thinking of it as not only focusing on land, but also incorporating water into the equation. And this is a very general idea and very general purpose. So I defined 2 different sets of objectives. The first set related to the exploration of territories and connections, and the second set related to coastal heritage at risk. Regarding the first, the idea is to try to model potential mobility and connectivity in these coastal areas in the Mediterranean basin, and use that information to investigate the structure of the territorial occupation during Roman times. And in order to define the influence of the potential mobility in the organization of territories and landscapes in these areas. Then moving on into the heritage part of the project, the idea is to try and develop a methodology for identifying heritage at risk in these coastal areas. We need to consider that these coastal areas in the Mediterranean basin are under very high pressure, not only because of this urban development and so on, but also because of the climatic emergency is affecting very much the conservation and the preservation of the coastal areas. And with the destruction and modifications of these coastal areas, the archaeology that is buried within is also being affected and destroyed without us barely knowing it. So the idea is to also create a new resource of coastal occupation based on all of the information that I am gathering about the archaeology of these areas, and then try to, well, experiment with creating a predictive model in order to use all of this archaeological information and spatial information to create or to test the possibility of predicting where coastal, well, port areas could be located or could be found. Again, all of this is a little bit, it's a bit experimental, but I'm very much looking forward to try all of this. Then you will realize that this is a massive purpose and massive research objectives, and it is very difficult to carry out this in such a short time, that is 4 years. So I have placed some constraints to the scope of research in terms of space. So I'm basically focusing on 3 different areas: Southern Baetica, so the southern part of Iberia, the Iberian Peninsula, the Tyrrhenian coast of Italy, so basically the central western coast of Italy, and the western coast of Asia Minor. And here you have a map where I am showing roughly the location and the delimitation of these areas. Then in terms of time, I am defining a range or a specific period in which I am focusing, which is the High Empire, roughly between the late 1st century BC to the early 3rd century AD. And you may wonder why I have chosen this specific time frame, and it is because it is in this period where it is apparent that there is an increase on the movement and trade between the different ports in the Mediterranean. So I was very much curious about how that apparent increase on movement it was impacting the organization of territories and the organization of coastal areas, and whether there were more ports or ports were repurposed and so on. So it's a very interesting period to explore. Okay, so I have already introduced some of the challenges I am facing, but I would like to make them a bit more explicit. So first of all, even though I have constrained the study areas, the 3 case studies I have chosen are still very large. And then I am compiling a vast amount of information that is not only about the archaeology, but also the geoarchaeology and the topographic and geographical aspects of these coastal areas. Then I have some limited time and funding for this research, so I need to be careful in not losing myself in some rabbit holes and so on, which is very easy with this topic, I can tell you, and so on. But I am not going to continue with the challenges. However, as we know that as researchers, it is possible to develop a number of strategies that help us achieve a better, well, our purposes, research purposes. And in my case, these strategies are having some careful planning and execution of this research. Then to be aware of what data is already available and openly and accessible to me in order to help me move things on with data collection. Then it is very, very, very important to have some management and processing tools that will help in processing and analyzing all of this very heterogeneous data. And then it's especially important to monitor to control the progression of the project. To make sure that you are on track and not becoming delayed because of XYZ circumstances. And if you are getting delayed, to develop strategies to help you gain back or return to the right track, and so on. Okay, so as you can see, this is all very interesting and and a lot of information to process. But you may be having another question in your mind, and this: why is Beyond Ports, this project, relevant? And for that, I'm going to give you some context. Starting by the historical context and the research context of the archaeology of the Roman Empire. Okay, so this is a map showing the Roman Empire at the highest of its extension and power, basically at the end of the reign of Trajan, Emperor Trajan, at the beginning of the 2nd century AD. So here I'm showing the distribution of towns, also the connections between those towns through this very popular network of roads, and also the limitation of the provinces, the administrative units that integrated the Roman Empire. So as we can see in this map, we can realize that the Roman Empire is actually a very complex entity that has many different developments, and it's a complex historical phenomenon to grasp. But we can also see that there is a lot going on land, but the majority of the Roman Empire is actually developing around a water body, the Mediterranean Sea. So probably the Mediterranean Sea is going to have some role in helping to connect these different parts of the Roman Empire. So if we turn our focus on the sea instead of the land, we see that the Mediterranean Sea might have been a very important element in connecting the different parts of the Roman Empire. Most of all, if we consider that movement and transport of goods across the sea was actually the most efficient way to move heavy loads. And here there is a table with some relative costs of moving goods through the sea, upriver, downriver, and through land. This is under debate. Please do not take these ratios as at face value, because there are differences between the different authors. But it already provides an idea of how the connection through the sea was probably the easiest way to connect with others. And taking that into account, I'm bringing you another map showing the most common long distance routes between different locations within the Mediterranean. This is taken from a book from Pascal Arnaud, published in 2005, and then there is another re-edition in 2020, and it's a very interesting book. And this map is particularly focusing on long distance traveling, but we need to think also of traveling not being only long distance, but also the regional movement and even the local movement of people around using the sea as a means of travel. So think, for example, if we think of the Strait of Gibraltar to the west of the Mediterranean, the movement between bricks from Tingis to Baelo Claudia, just to give you an example, and so on. Okay, so if we consider how easy it is to move things around using the sea, and then how the Roman Empire is developing around the Mediterranean basin, then there is a particular element that is coming to the front, and these are the ports. Ports understood as the nodes that make possible the connections between the land and the sea. And with these connections, also making possible the link to establish links between very distant places across the empire. Then we need to think of ports as a very wider range of possibilities. For example, having very large infrastructures, and I'm bringing you here one photo of the northern mall, Molo Settentrionale in Portus, very next to the Fiumicino airport here in Rome. But also, it's not only, you can find ports not only when there is massive infrastructure. There is a whole scope, a whole range of possibilities, and you may we may find that many or the vast majority of ports in the Mediterranean did not actually have any infrastructure at all. So when we think of sea maritime transport, we tend to think of the very large maritime vessels. Obviously, those big maritime vessels will require some infrastructure to make the loading and unloading easier. But it is not only very large ships, it's also smaller ships, smaller size ships that are making this transport and this movement of goods possible across the entire regions and localities. So for those small ships, it is not necessary to have infrastructure. You just pull your boat to the beach and just to make it easier to load or unload, and that's basically it. And then just to give you an idea of how how very large ports would have been, here is a 3D reconstruction of the situation of Portus at the beginning of the 2nd century AD. Taken from the Portus project, where I worked for quite a few years. Okay, so we see that ports might be a very interesting element to check and to study and to analyze in order to understand better the connections within the Roman Empire and its development and so on. So this is the study of ports it is not something that I have come up with suddenly. The study of ports is actually a topic that has some tradition within maritime archaeology and also in Roman archaeology. And recently, in the last 15-20 years, there has been quite an expansion of these studies. However, because I come from a research place in which I like to look at things at the scale of regions and the scale of landscapes, I find that there are some limitations in how ports have been approached until now. First of all, is that there is an emphasis on the analysis of port infrastructures. And this is fine. And this is actually very relevant because we need to know how port infrastructure developed, how it was used, the chronology of these infrastructures, and to understand how the port phenomenon developed and expanded across the Mediterranean, across the Roman Empire. However, these kind of studies are introducing what I find is more like a local perspective on the study of ports that is basically focusing on specific sites rather than on their integration within their regional or geographical context. Then we need to think of ports as a very complex phenomenon. It is not only the infrastructure, it's also how that infrastructure is used, how movement is executed through that infrastructure, how it is organized, how it changes through time. And considering time, it's also important to take into account that ports are happening on a very specific geographical setting, which are coastal areas, and coastal areas that are subject to transformations, to very, very deep transformations that make the study of ports a bit more complicated and also a little bit more interesting. Transformations such as, for example, processes of alluvial sedimentation that make ports that make ports to not be useful potentially useful or usable across time. Then processes of coastal progression over regression. Then also changes in the sea level, not only because of the natural processes, but processes of geostatic movement and so on, but also because of tectonic processes and tectonic phenomena. And all of this, you have to also consider that some of the port infrastructure created in Roman times can be incorporated into modern port infrastructure, such as it is the case in the modern port of Civitavecchia to the north of Rome, where the Trajanic structures are integrated within the modern port and still seen using Google Earth imagery. So, and so on. And it's within this context that I am trying to develop this project, and hopefully I have explained a little bit, and now you can understand a little bit better the actual context and why I'm focusing on these research objectives and so on. Okay, so this is the project, and these are the objectives, the research context, and so on. But this is all very well, but how am I going to make this work? Well, I have, in order to make Beyond Ports to work, I have decided on a number of foundations. And for me, I have four for me. Some theoretical concepts, then the type of data I am collecting, the tools I'm going to use to process that data, and the methods I am going to apply to make sense of that information, all of that information. Regarding the theoretical concepts, I am making a mixture between maritime concepts and geographic concepts. From the maritime side, I'm working with the concept of port system and the concept of maritime cultural landscape, which have been around for a few years already. Then from the geographic perspective, I'm incorporating the concepts of territories and territory and landscape, understood as social constructions. So things that are developed by the communities for the communities, and that change with the community. And also I need to introduce as well the tension between the relationship between the people and the environment. So how people have an impact in the environment and how the environment have an impact in the community, and how all of that is integrated within this very complex concept of phenomenon of ports in Roman time. Regarding data, this is I find this particularly challenging, but also very interesting, and it's because I require for this project quite a large volume of information, and then information that is not only massive amount, but also very, very heterogeneous, because I am compiling information not only about the archaeology, but also about the physical geography of my study areas, also historical maps that to help me understand the most recent developments of these regions. Also, in order to account for the change of these areas, and also incorporating remote sensing imagery, basically satellite imagery, to try to understand a little bit better the dynamics. Then, because I am using all of these very different sources of data, I need very powerful tools to make sense of all of this. And for that, I have two main ones, basically a geodatabase and a geographic information system. And then I am also incorporating statistics. And in terms of methods to explore all of this information, I will be applying spatial analysis. I'm also adding geoarchaeological concerns into these topic, into these explorations, and I will try also network analysis in order to try to see how to make sense of all of these connections, and some modelings and simulations. So with all of these sets of foundations, the idea is to model ancient topographies use these models of ancient topographies to define natural corridors of movement, both on land and on water, in order to understand the distribution of the known ports, and also to reach the better understanding of past connectivities and how these past connectivities had an impact on territories and their organization. So regarding specifically the tools I'm using, actually I'm using this project database so much. It's probably my best friend in the project. So I have created a relational database, and here you can see the conceptual model that is allowing to establish the connections between the different entities I have identified and about which I am compiling information. Then I am writing all of the documentation about the database in Mermaid, which is a markdown language that allows you to create graphs such as this one. Then that's the theoretical part of a database, but I am implementing that using PostgreSQL and with its special extension, PostGIS, and I'm using that as the core of the database. But in order to help me work with the database, I have also created a front end using LibreOffice Base. And certainly, one of the most powerful things about this database is that it's connected with GIS. So I am not only compiling information, attributes, information about the chronology or the functionality or the type of evidence associated to each of these ports, but also there is their geographical distribution distribution. Then I'm using controlled vocabularies in order to ensure that I am standardizing the content to as much as possible, and I have drawn equivalencies between the categories I'm using and the classifications of sites used by other projects to make possible in the future to integrate my data set with other people's data sets. These are two examples of the controlled vocabularies. And then moving on into the project GIS, I'm using QGIS, again, an open source program, using it for visualization purposes and also for the analysis of data. And this is a visualization of the data set I had compiled up until April last year. But since then, I am also incorporating information and data from other resources, such as the database of cities in the Roman Empire, the shipwrecks in the Mediterranean, information from Pleiades and the digital atlas of the Roman Empire, databases that I have created in the past in my previous research. And also I'm spending quite a lot of time in libraries compiling, looking for more information to refine the information and the data I already have in my database, or to discover sites that I haven't included yet. So that map is showing the sites like almost 1 year ago. This is how it looks now. So just to give you an idea, right now in my database, there are over 15,000 features, out of which in Asia Minor I have 1,800 sites, more or less. In the Iberian Peninsula is 1,470, and in Italy, where I am still working, it's almost 3,000 sites and well, archaeological features. So this is something, and I am still working on that. Okay, so again, those are the resources, those are the tools, but what can we do with that? I'm bringing you two examples in order to highlight the impact of considering change when thinking of ports. The first example is a model of that I have carried out within a GIS environment, in QGIS, that is incorporating the changes in the coastline, particularly focusing on the location of Miletus. Miletos is a very important Greek city in Asia Minor. You can see its location here. And this is the actual location of Miletos nowadays, as seen from satellite imagery. Okay, so Miletos was a very powerful naval entity, and that had a massive colonial expansion. But nowadays, its location is actually around 5 kilometers inland. But if we consider how the environment has changed, and we have information from a lot of geoarchaeological research that has been carried out in the area, we see that the situation at the change of era, at the beginning of the 1st century AD, was very, very different. So the blue area is actually the sea that is connected with this internal lake. This orangey area is the progression of the land, of the alluvial plain of the Meander River within just 300 years. And this has a massive impact on the regional developments and the regional politics of this area. Because if we focus on this port called Priene, of Priene up in the map, we see that Priene actually had in the past access to the sea, but it had lost it in the centuries before, between the 3rd and the 1st century BC. And this had a massive consequence and created a conflict between Miletos and Priene, because Miletos tried to take ownership of the new land created by the Meander, and for over 100 years, Priene and Miletos had a conflict, an ongoing conflict that finally Rome settled at the beginning of the 1st century BC. So this is something that really affects the lives of people in the past. Again, another example there I will bring forward is the case of Ephesus. And I like this one very much because it shows very clearly the relationship between the community and the sea, and how the communities adapt to the changing situation and the in these coastal areas. Okay, so again, oops, one sec. Okay, one sec. Now it's coming. Okay, so this is the situation of nowadays. Ephesus is right inland. It's very much inland. It doesn't have any connection with the sea. But if we come back to archaic times, thanks to geoarchaeological research, we can see that next to the Artemision, there was a sacred harbor that was active in this time. But then in classical times, because of the progression of the alluvial plain, that sacred harbor became inactive because of sedimentation. So that harbor, instead of new harbors, were created and developed in the area. The main one of them was the Coresian harbor of the port of Coressus. But because of the progression of the alluvial plain, again, that harbor became it was not possible to use that harbor anymore. And by the end of the 4th century BC, the king of Ephesus decided to move the whole community to a new location, where the city of Ephesus now lies. And this is important because this new location was at the end of a natural bay that acted as a natural harbor. But guess what? The sedimentation, the progression of the alluvial plain continued, and by the end of the 1st century BC, there were very grave problems with the sedimentation of the port. And by the 2nd century AD, the people of Ephesus needed to excavate and create a canal, an artificial canal, to connect their port to the sea. Okay, So those are the two examples, and I'm going to make like a quick review of what I have done so far in this project. So first of all, I did get to know the University of Lund and the institute where I am developing this research. I had done 3 international moves from UK to Germany, then from Germany to Spain, and then from Spain to Italy, where I am living now. And it's very rewarding. It's a very living abroad and having the possibility of working with other people and experiencing their libraries and their ways, the different ways of work, is very rewarding. But international moves are very difficult and complex and stressful. So it's a balance. For me, it's worth it. But if you're going to do something like that, take that into you need to be aware of that additional complication. Anyway, then I have also designed and implemented the project database and GIS using open source software. I have created a base dataset both in a spatial and non-spatial dataset, using all of these resources that I have already mentioned for Asia Minor and Baetica, and I am working at the moment in the case of Italy. And I am expanding this dataset with bibliography and other resources. And then I'm also doing some geoarchaeological, I'm doing research, well, I'm compiling information and research about geoarchaeological studies that have been carried out in these areas in order to perform some topographic modeling to allow me to reconstruct these past topographies and connectivities. Then I have also completed some pilot studies on modeling multimodal mobility, particularly one on the Tiber Valley that is going to be published hopefully by the end of this year or the beginning of next year. And then I'm working on another example from Asia Minor that I will be presenting in a few weeks in Amsterdam at the Computer Applications in Archaeology conference. And then the next steps are basically finish the data compilation, then relocating to Sweden, that I will be doing by the end of June, beginning of July. Then I will start performing archaeological analysis and the topographic modeling and spatial analysis. I am very much looking forward to all of this. Then I will also carry out activities of scientific dissemination, going to conferences, publishing papers, and also outreach to try to bring all of these activities and ideas also to the general public, because they are the ones funding this kind of research initiatives. So it is only fair for them to know what's going on with this project. And then also possibly involved in teaching of landscape archaeology, GIS, database management systems, and so on, and also collaborating with other researchers. The idea is from out of this project, I will make the relevant data openly accessible to everyone. Then I will also make the algorithms and scripts also open, particularly in GitHub, but I may use some other repositories. Also, I will write some publications and hopefully 2 books about this. And also I think there is potential for creating a predictive or experimenting with predictive modeling of coastal heritage at risk in the Mediterranean, but we shall see. The good news is that I still have some time to complete all of this. So until then, you can see that I will be kind of busy. And thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them or try to answer them. Thank you.
Yes, thank